Welcome to the 3030 Health Podcast. The following discussion is for education and entertainment. It is not intended to diagnose or treat disease. Please do not apply any of this information without first discussing it with your doctor. Here is your host, Dr. Ruiz.
Hello everyone, super excited about my guest today. My guest today is Dr. Debbie Bright. She is a weight loss and gut health expert. Dr. Debbie Bright is an internationally recognized and board-certified functional medicine physician, author, speaker, and public figure. She's also a weight loss and gut health expert. Dr. Bright founded the Millennial Health movement, helping you discover your hidden food sensitivities so you can heal your face, fat, and fatigue, all while dropping up to 7 to 21 pounds within 21 days or less so you can look and feel years younger. This was a super interesting interview. I hope you enjoyed the show. Hello everyone, super excited to be here with my friend, Dr. Debbie Bright. Debbie, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm in recovery like you from the Mindshare Summit, which we got to hang out at.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. So many cool people. And for anyone out there, listening to this, I think that I was one of the people that pushed you to start doing this crazy stuff where you actually interview people or you're interviewed by people, wasn't I?
You absolutely are. Like, I've been really good at hiding out and declining offers to speak. And you're like, no, we're not going to play that game anymore.
It was like me and JJ Virgin. Who else? Who else pushed you out of your cocoon?
Dr. C.
Dr. C, of course, yeah. Did I ever tell you the story about my first podcast? I was like, stewing the idea that I wanted a podcast, and I wanted to have a big name as my first, guest. So I asked Dr. C when I was shadowing him before I even finished school. And he said, okay, yeah, give me the date when the podcast will launch. And I was like, well, I don't know. No. Give me the date of the first episode. So I was like, okay. And it was in October. And I said, January 24th. And he goes, okay, let's do it January 12th. So like he was just pushing me. And he was like, he was not going to give me an interview unless I had a launch date. Not even like, whatever. He wanted commitment, and I think I would have just sat around on 20 episodes if he hadn't pushed me that hard. So, he's awesome.
I think it takes that sometimes. And speaking of Dr. C with pushing, I'm in a mastermind group with him, and he knew it was one of my goals to launch my own product line, my own supplement line. And in that mastermind, my first assigned accountability partner at the very first retreat ended up being Dr. C. And I was like, oh my God. I was like incredibly inspired and like so afraid at the same time. And then he's like, look, you're going to launch a supplement line. And when we get on our first call, like, I'm going to ask you how it's going. We get on the first call. He's like, well, how's it going? I was like, I haven't done anything yet. And he was like, well, what's underneath that? And I was like, I don't know. I don't really want to ship product out of my house. And there's so many moving parts. And he's like, okay, hang on. I'm going to send an email right now. And he sends an email to a warehousing company. And he's like, by the time we get off this call, they'll have an answer for you. And sure enough, they did. And so here we are, like the supplement line is about ready to launch in a few weeks.
It's incredible, it's incredible. Now we're talking shop, how incredibly kind he is with his pushing and with his criticism. You never feel bogged down. You always feel, you said it, inspired.
Mm-hmm. Well, we just hang out with people that won't let us play a small game.
Yeah, that's it. And that's it. It's because, we're here to help. And if we just, shuffle our feet and think about what ifs, people are not going to get helped. And we are here right now talking because I see that you will be helping a lot of people in the near future, and I want in.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I always try to remind myself. I think somebody once told me that if we have a gift, right? And in our case, you and I, we help patients, we help people get their health back. If we are so afraid to step forward and speak out about it, then our fear is us being selfish. And so here I am today because you don't let me be selfish.
Well, but because you have been in this cocoon, growing your wings, for people that might not know you, what's your hero story? How did you go from being just, a student and then going into medical school and then now, doing this platform and helping people with different food choices and identifying food sensitivities?
I knew this was coming because I'm an avid listener of your podcast. Locking in one story is pretty tough. There was a series of events that kind of solidified that I'm on the right track. Initially it started as a kid. My dad had a couple of back surgeries. He was put on disability, wasn't able to go back to work anymore. And so he got to be the stay-at-home dad. And, I watched him kind of live through a lot of pain, and that sort of destroyed my dad, like his moods. When you don't feel well and you're in pain, you're angry all the time, you don't have a lot of patience. And so there was that side of it. And then on the other side is my brother had migraines, and he was put on a medication he had to take 3 times a day. They were like, for all your life. And if you miss a pill, then you're going to get migraines. And so, I just couldn't quite understand why certain people needed medications and other people seemed to live just healthy and fine. So like at a very young age, I couldn't quite wrap my head around that. Focusing more on my brother here, he was a wrestler. He was a junior that year in high school. And he ended up getting a migraine the day that he was supposed to start his district tournament. And his coach called me. I was in college. He's like, hey, Nathan's sick. Like, we don't know if he's going to be able to wrestle. And I drove to his tournament, and he's in a dark room and he's vomiting and he's losing eyesight and he has all the auras going on. And I'm like, Nathan, you can't forfeit this tournament. Like, if you don't go and wrestle, you're going to miss state. And he was about to throw in the towel. The last minute, he decides, like, okay, I'm going to go out there. He pins the kid. He goes in. He gets to go home early, rest for the night. That year, my brother went on to make the state finals. Furthermore, he went and applied to Annapolis, and he ended up getting denied through the rounds because they said, if you're going to take this medication, if you're going to need this medication, like in a time where you wouldn't be dependable if you don't have it. Anyway, long story short, he started bodybuilding, really cleaned up his diet, didn't need medication anymore, just kicked it to the curb, hasn't used it since. And I'm not going to say that he's been 100% migraine free, but I mean, maybe once a year, where even years go by and he doesn't have them, or doesn't really need like the Imitrex shots anymore to like keep him under control. So there was that side. When I was in grad school, kind of fast forward, I was probably way too hungover to even be at this event, but I went to the Parker seminars and I walked into a room to hear, I happened to hear JJ Virgin speak about nutrition and food sensitivities in a way that I'd never quite heard before. And so I walked out of that really blown away. And I tried one of her programs, and not to say that I was like really overweight or anything, but I'm in grad school. I take Adderall. I'm having trouble focusing, whatnot. I try her program. I'm sleeping well. I'd shed 14 pounds so quickly that people were like, are you sick? Like, did something bad happen in your life? And I'm like, no, I actually feel really great. And like my other friends are like, hey, let's go get a Red Bull. Let's get a coffee. I'm like, no, I don't need that crap. Like, I feel amazing. And my skin was glowing. It was just super awesome. So that kind of sank in that there was like something to nutrition here. And then fast forward even more. Now I'm a chiropractor. I moved to San Diego. I'm working with these patients. And I had this one patient that I was rehabbing his shoulder, and we got about 90% better. And I just couldn't get that extra 10%. And he came in one day in a pair of shorts. It was like a hot day. And I looked down, and he is completely covered in psoriasis. I asked him about it. I'm just like, hey, like, what's going on with this? It's like, oh, I'm taking all these medications. Is it getting any better? No, it's just been getting worse. And I was like, I really think this shoulder pain is tied into this, and it's related to your gut health, and it's dietary. We made some tweaks. He started shedding weight. Shoulder pain went away. Psoriasis clears up. And that was the point where I drew the line in the sand. And I was like, I appreciate my chiropractic education, but there's something more here. And I just have just a little bit more interest in the nutrition side. And so I went on to develop these online programs to help people discover their hidden food sensitivities and clean up their nutrition. And there you have it. I've never looked back.
So much to unpack from this. For example, just starting with the medication that your brother was taking, what happened 100, 200, 300 years, 1,000 years ago when people didn't have that medication to survive in time of war, in time of, hunting and gathering. Is it 1,000% necessary for a person to be functional, to be on Imitrex shots? And the answer is no. But we do live in a very dirty environment. And there is not a lot of stuff that we can do in order to prevent things like contamination in the air or water or your food sources or, all of these things. So I'm a big believer in using technology in order to advance and to help be in a better position to survive. So like, for example, if your brother got a migraine, I wouldn't be like, as a practitioner, I would never be like, oh, maybe you messed up and you ate something that you shouldn't have. You learned your lesson. No, it's like, no, use the medication, get out of pain, and be more careful in the future, or let's weigh the options. But having one migraine every once a year or every other year it's such a big win. In order for him to be able to identify, because there was a triage process and probably he was very restricted at some point in his food choices. And now he has kind of like curated or triaged what his triggering factors are, whether it's, maybe loud noises or smells or foods. But now he is in control of his life. And that is amazing.
Yeah, it's, his biggest thing is whenever he sees his neurologist, he's like, this guy just pushes scripts on me. It's like a 15-minute visit and the guy's just writing, oh, try this medication. Okay, well, some years go by, try that medication. And it's like, dude, like, why don't you ask me about other factors in my life? I always hear you say you're so divorced from conventional medicine. And like, I'm on the coattails. I'm with you. They're just missing like the bigger picture with patients' lifestyles. And, being able to speak to this and say, hey, headaches, do you suffer from headaches? Are you suffering from migraines? I've had people go through my programs and I don't tell them to do this. I'm like, talk about this with your conventional practitioner because I'm not licensed to say take or don't take a medication. But people, they make the choice and they throw their migraine medication away. They're like, I feel so much better. I don't even need this anymore. So it's just been exciting to see that.
And it's not like, taking a migraine medication or any medication is without, and we're not shaming people that are taking medication because, I feel that my best patients are the ones that want to get better, whether it's with a little bit of thyroid medication, whether it's some adrenal support, herbs, maybe an antibiotic because they have a gut infection. There's no shame in using technology, but it is just in the context of feeling better, being better, because it is so hard to live your best life with the environment that we have. And then it's insane because I can imagine like someone from the conventional medicine world listening to this recording and thinking, so you mean to tell me that if you identify your food sensitivities, you can eliminate psoriasis and headaches? Those are not related. How can where's the mechanism, or an autoimmune disease or irregular periods, you name it. If you identify your food sensitivities, you have the ability to resolve a lot of problems. But there are people out there that still believe that the food that you eat does not correlate with health, and that is insane.
Well, you just listed off a slew of symptoms that conventional medicine would obviously argue don't go together, that people themselves don't realize go together. And everything you just mentioned are what all of my patients that go through my programs report back as, improvements in the headaches, improvements in the energy, improvements in the period pain. We've had women who are dealing with infertility I don't claim to be like to have anything to do with infertility when we talk about this. And the women go through and they message me and they like, oh my gosh, we got pregnant and I know it was from doing this program, because they cleaned up so much of their health and dialed in what their body was needing. And it's just amazing. It's like, oh, our baby was born on Christmas Day. And I'm like, oh, that's so awesome.
Or it's like, oh my God, I got pregnant because they weren't planning it. If you get someone's, digestion right, hormones right, even outlook in life right, you look at a woman the wrong way and they'll get pregnant. Because fertility, it's like at the top of health. If your body, when it's primed and when it's healthiest, the next logical step is to reproduce. And then another thing that I always say whenever I talk about infertility is that the number one cause for infertility in the United States is unhealthy sperm. And then the second cause would be hypothyroidism. And then you can start looking into different problems with the uterus or sex hormones. But if you start addressing those things that are making your thyroid slow, they're making your thyroid slow, and now you're not pooping, and you're constipated, and now you're toxic. You would never think those are related. But then you start healing the gut by giving, those proteins that are actually beneficial for you, and they're not irritating you. And now you're reducing the inflammation. Now you're not toxic. Now your thyroid starts to work, and boom, you get pregnant. But if you follow our train of thought, or if you listen to people, out there talking like JJ Virgin, Rob Wolf, all those guys, and you're part in this inner circle, it's like, no duh. But it is so frustrating that outside our health circle, this is like unheard of.
I catch a lot of crap from some conventional physicians. And sometimes it's hard because there were 5 of us around the same age in high school that went through school, and we became doctors. And a few of them are MD, and one became a DO, and then I became a DC. Some of them are cool and open. They see my posts online, and they see what I talk about with my patients, and they see the results, and they're curious. So they ask for research and hey, I'm kind of open to this. But there's one that she's a dermatologist, and I went back to our 15-year reunion back home, and she's across the bar. And
Time
she's
out.
Yeah,
Time
yeah.
out. 15-year reunion? What the fuck, man? Did you graduate from high school when you were 8?
I'm 34, so last year would have been 16 years out of high school.
So when you eat the right things, you probably don't age either. So, boom.
Oh, can we just speak to that for a second?
No, you got to tell me that story about your friend, and then we'll go back to that.
We'll come back to it. Well, she's just across the bar, and I walk in, and she's just frustrated. She is just waiting for me to show up so that she can tell me that she doesn't like what I have to say about skin health. And it all stemmed from a post where some people were talking about psoriasis, and I chimed in about gut health, and I posted a video about gluten, and there was a patient. It was from the Tom O'Brien's Betrayal docuseries, and these patients were saying, "Oh, I went to the end of this conference. I saw 65 dermatologists. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with my skin, and they took them off gluten, and the skin rash cleared up within a week." And someone asked me, why don't all the doctors know about this? And I this might have been a little bit of a dig. I was like, it's not their fault. They kind of have a pharma-funded education. And she just was all pissed about that. And she said, I agree with 80% of the stuff that you say. And I was like, okay, well, what's the other 20 that you're not agreeing with? And her thing was, I try to tell patients about this stuff, but they're not compliant. And I'm like, well, it's one thing to spend 15 minutes and say you need to go gluten-free, but it's a complete failure if you're not going to walk the patient through that, help them, coach them, give them a meal plan, put them into fast action, and then be there to support them. The conventional medicine side just doesn't offer that.
At some point, we kind of have to be assholes, or, and if someone doesn't want to be helped, there is nothing we can do to force them to go gluten-free, to force them to eat organic, to force them to, prepare their own meals. Some people want a medication, taking a pill is easy. Putting a cream is easy. Changing your life is fucking hard. Okay. and
Yep.
and the people that are listening to a show like this, the people that are logging into the Facebook lives, those people want truth, and they want to get to the underlying cause and fix completely what's wrong with their physiology. And in order to do that, sometimes you have to switch lifestyle. Okay, cool, but there are people that are not interested in that, and it's perfectly okay. It's their life. They get to, now when I get a little bit squirrely, or is when they're doing things to a child, or when they're doing things to a friend or family, or exposing, like, I'm okay with someone smoking if they want to. I'm not okay with people being exposed to secondhand smoke, because in the end, you live your life to wherever, I would never smoke. But if that's what you want to do, hey, more power to you. And it's so difficult for a conventional doctor, because the patients that they're getting, they're looking to see who has an appointment. They have, they have a 5-minute visit. And if you show up and they say, hey, you need to stop eating wheat, I'll see you in 6 months, that can be very frustrating. So that's the reason I chose the path that I chose. And that's the reason I have to put out podcasts and go and speak at conferences and do all of these things, because we have curated the people that want our message. And it happens a lot, like especially with family, when you discover something's working for you, whether, it's diet or exercise or whatever, you want to invite them in, and they are the first ones that are going to shut you down.
Oh, yeah. Family can be a tough one for sure.
The only thing you can do is lead by example. And when you show up to class and you've lost 14 pounds and you haven't aged, since your 10th class reunion, and people are like, okay, what's up with this? What are you doing? And that's when you can pounce and be an influencer and help people in a deep way.
Talking about the aging thing, I'm from a town called Boonville, Missouri, and it is so hard for me to get on social media or go back home and see the people that I grew up with, because I'm 34, they look 54, and they have all kinds of autoimmune diseases. They're becoming diabetic. They're overweight. Their skin looks so aged. And it's just so sad for me to see this. But that is an area where they're not exposed to the lifestyles that, like, you and I live. They're not exposed to the type of medicine that you and I practice. And it's kind of changing. I mean, I have a big grassroots following back there. And so it's like you said, though, the ones that want help reach out and ask, and the ones who don't, they stay blind to this type of medicine and this type of lifestyle. But yeah, it's hard to see that.
And it's very interesting, because how did you become exposed to this? How did I become exposed to this? And it was a friend, and we were having a conversation, and he suggested a book. And I read the book because it was very sciencey, and I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. Let me try it. And then, rabbit hole of information, and I started, reading blogs and listening to podcasts and, all of that. And then tried to convince my family, didn't listen. Eventually, two of my sisters, are completely in, because they saw my change, okay? But what happens when you live in a food desert? What happens when you can't afford internet? What happens, how can we reach those people? And it becomes philosophical, and it becomes, really tough to think about it. And the only thing that we can do is continue to inspire people and continue to put out information for free for people to log in and read and make their own decisions. But yeah, it can get pretty dark if you really start thinking about it.
It really can. In the hometown that I'm from, people that are, when they're in my programs, they can't always get access to the foods that we're telling them to eat. And so the committed ones have to drive like 26 minutes away or so and go to more natural grocery stores. But they're also the ones who are committed, right? So they're doing it. They're like, how early can I get my next week's grocery list? I got to go to Columbia and buy my groceries. And I'm like, I'm so proud of you. You guys are doing such a great job. But yeah, it's just not, available in some certain areas. And it's like you said, it's just, it's like doing our Facebook lives and doing our Instagram lives and doing the podcasting and writing the articles. And I've gone back to the hometown and spoke about it. And leading by example is, that's a big thing. I get so many women that want to do my programs and they're like, what about my kids? What about my husband? And it's like,
that makes me so mad.
Yeah. I know. I know. It's like, you do you. Like, some of them are just, this is the best part. The results by association, when the husband drops a ton of weight and sleeps better and feels more energized and sex drive improves and all these great things are happening just because he's eating the food that the wife is cooking for him, then he's all in.
Yeah, I haven't said this in a bunch of podcasts, but early in my early podcast, I would say, you heal mom, you heal the whole family, because she is going to be making the grocery list. She is going to be preparing the menu, and leading by example also means that when we go to a conference, we party, and we're not perfect 100% of the time, and sometimes we stay up late reviewing charts, and we don't sleep because we are writing content, and we don't take care of ourselves all the time 100% of the time, but we do enough to give us a latitude so we can continue doing what we're doing. And a big part of that is eating well, resting, and being very conscious about the way that we exercise, because that's a stressor. And I think you can talk a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah. I came to see you in April because I reached out to Dr. C and I was like, hey, I am so fatigued. I don't know if I can continue running this business this way. And I had, so he told me to come see you. So I got on a plane, I flew out, and you said, hey, what's going on? It's like, I specialize in food sensitivities for patients. We're like, okay, so the diet's locked in. So like, we got to dig deeper. We got to look under some other stones and figure out what was going on. And I like to say I'm kind of a rookie to the online traveling mastermind balance, where I'm quickly learning, because I had gone to Thailand and Laos and then traveled 35 straight hours to Tampa. I landed at 8:30 in the morning and my mastermind meeting started at 9. And then I came back from that and the jet lag was extreme. And then I had to go back to Orlando like a month later. I went to another event and flying home. But when I landed, I got the worst case of the flu I have ever had, down hard, 8 weeks. And I just never could come back out of it energy wise. And so that's how that's how you and I became friends, because I became a patient.
I'm going to say something, it's like, I'm going to speak for myself. Okay. I'm like a, type A, more is more kind of person. Okay. And I think that you have a little bit of those traits in a different way. And you were running yourself to the ground because you were trying to do all this business stuff and you were taking care of yourself and kind of like meditating through super intense workouts.
Yep.
And intuitively, working out is good for you. And when I sat you down and I said, you need to quit working out so hard, you were like, oh, yeah. and it's not like forever because I've seen a couple of your posts and you're kickboxing again and you're doing all this, but that elimination of that stressor for a tiny little bit of time, because you do enjoy to work out, was like transformative for you. And I remember having a conversation with you saying, I can give you pills and supplements, but that's a supplement to supplement your lifestyle. But in order to have true healing, you're going to have to let go and you're going to have to change your lifestyle. And you're an awesome person and you identified and triaged and did everything right. And now you're back at doing what you love. Why? Because you are committed and because you understand and because you want to do it. But like I said, intuitively, exercise is a good thing. So when you exercise, you're doing a good thing. So doing more of that good thing should be way better than doing a little bit of that thing. But sometimes you just gotta let go. Which this segue leads really into something that I want to talk to you about, which is orthorexia. When you do like food sensitivities and things like that, you start identifying things that might be a little bit inflammatory. So like gluten, or maybe seed oils, and you start feeling better because you've eliminated those things, and dairy and eggs, and you start feeling better, and then you start like going online, and now you're looking at nightshades, and now you're looking at oxalates, and now and then you end up eating nothing but like pork rinds because that's the only thing that hasn't. So how do you deal with that, and how do you put out a message where we understand that the elimination is so important, but then there's a second part. There's a second part which I'll let you explain.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought up the orthorexia because I love elimination diets. And, now people are kind of jumping on the food sensitivity lab work bandwagon. And then they're coming to me and they're like, I can't eat celery and peas and beef. I've kept this all out of my diet and I'm so dialed in on it. And I don't take these certain supplements because it can, I can't have this pea protein. And like, it's overwhelming. And then they're like, and nothing's changing.
Because again, intuitively, if you eliminate a little bit of things and you feel better, eliminating more and more and more gets better.
We would want to think that, right?
In our tiny little brains, that's how we think.
Exactly. And then people are eating next to nothing and it's so limited. And then they're missing out on vital nutrients. And it's not an ideal place to be in to live that restricted. So, when I first built my program, it was a 21-day elimination of gluten, soy, dairy, eggs, corn, peanuts, added sugars, and artificial sweeteners. The results people were getting were outstanding. But then I missed a key component. And that was, what do you do after the 21 days? And like I knew, like I've studied through the Institute for Functional Medicine. I knew there needed to be a reintroductory phase. And I would tell them at the end of the program what to do, but I wasn't leading them through it anymore. And so I had people that would get off the program and they'd be like, the first thing I'm going to do is go eat a cheeseburger. And they get like super, right? And they get super sick. And then it's not that a cheeseburger necessarily makes you sick, but there's gluten in the bun. You got into cheese, right? Which is dairy, crappy oils. Like, it's too much. So in this new program, in the food sensitivity slim down, we're still doing the elimination phase, but we're adding in the reintroductory phase, which is awesome because I ended up polling my community and I said, hey, do you guys want this? It's a big commitment to continue a program for like up to 10 weeks. Unanimous 100% vote. They were like, please give us the next phase because they don't know what to do. So I have them reintroduce one food per week and they eat it for 4 days and only that. So we're only going to introduce gluten this week. And then the next week, we're only going to reintroduce dairy. I give them a symptoms tracker and they start to look to see like, are they getting bloated? Is their skin breaking out? Are they getting a headache? Has their weight loss stalled? We look at different factors here. And then if it's green light and they don't really have any major reactions, well, okay, I can have that food. If they have a little bit of reaction, nothing crazy, but maybe they just kind of feel some fatigue or they just don't feel too good. It's like, oh, maybe you need to keep that food out another 3 to 6 months and work on healing your gut some more. So we move through and we reintroduce all the foods with the exception of added sugar and artificial sweeteners, because are you going to eat sugar from time to time? Absolutely. Like, you're going to have a birthday and you should be able to have some birthday cake and celebrate, but we don't need to focus on having that in the diet very often.
It's so insane, because I personally, I don't suggest my patients reintroduce wheat because I'm so biased because I benefited so much from eliminating wheat. But there are people that can deal with a little bit of wheat. One of my good friends, Adam, he can go and have like a sandwich. So whenever we go to a conference or we travel somewhere, he can go and eat a sandwich with the bread and everything, and he's perfectly fine. Now, if he does it up, multiple times in a row, he'll start getting some eczema and some diarrhea and stuff like that. He can do that. I cannot do that. I cannot do that. He can't handle beans though, so it's hilarious because I'm Mexican and I can eat beans all day long, and we've tried it. So we have dinners at my house or his house, and I'll properly prepare beans. I'll soak them overnight. I'll cook them gently. I make sure all the lectins are out. He gets fucked up if he eats beans. So up to the point that I just don't make beans whenever he's around because he can't control himself, and he'll always have beans like baked beans or any type of bean. So I just don't make them anymore because I don't want to hurt the poor guy.
You're like, dude, this is obviously an issue, but he's like, I just got to eat the beans. I can't help it.
Yeah, he might be half Mexican too. Going back to your cheeseburger example, it's almost like I would rather have someone that goes through your elimination program and then they finish and they're like, okay, I'm ready for a cheeseburger, than someone that is the opposite. And then they're like, oh man, I'm never going to be able to eat cheeseburgers ever again. And then they start eliminating other foods. And that's when you start going into that orthorexia rabbit hole, when you are starting to miss key components to a healthy living, vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin K, which is one of the hardest vitamins to get because you eliminate and then all of a sudden you are eating nothing but, 3 foods, not even groups, literally 3 foods.
Yeah, and we know if you don't rotate the diet and then you're only going to eat those 3 foods, eventually, if they don't have a healthy gut, those 3 foods are going to become a problem too.
Just to touch back, call back to when you're talking about IgG food sensitivities, that lab has been pretty much demonized, and we have been looking at all of the different, outcomes of eliminating IgG food intolerances from the diet. And there are very good, there are some studies on asthma, and there's some studies on IBS specifically. But I think it's very lazy to think that if you get your IgG panel, okay, celery and cucumbers and pineapple, okay, and then clams for some reason, and then you're like, well, I do eat a lot of celery. I love some tzatziki sauce, but I never have clams. If your practitioner is saying, if you eliminate those 3 things, that's it, you're gonna be cured. That's not right, okay? I use those tests to assess the level of intestinal permeability, the level of reaction to foods. If your whole thing is lit up, that means that you have a lot of inflammation and all those proteins are crossing and your immune system is like souped up and attacking everything. If you only have 1 or 2 things, maybe the inflammatory process is not there, and maybe now it's time to start adding other foods. So I know there's a lot of talk on health forums, kind of bashing that. And I think that as doctors, we have made a really bad assumption that eliminating those 1, 2, 3 things is going to be the end all be all, because the gold standard to identify food sensitivities is not a test. It's not a skin prick. It's an elimination diet.
Absolutely. You were talking about your buddy. Part of the reason why I have the reintroductory phase in the program is to teach the patient a lesson. I mean, they want to make their own discoveries, but let's say they go eat wheat or they eat dairy and they feel like absolute shit, or their skin breaks out. Whatever, like that's my husband. If my husband gets into dairy, he has acne all over. It's just not good. And that's when they make the real discoveries, right? It's really great to go through the elimination diet and feel amazing and have all these symptoms go away. And then have the patient, though, like miss the point and then dive back into a shitty lifestyle.
Sometimes literally shitty.
Literally shitty. I mean, the biggest win for some of these people is that we're just getting them off of such inflammatory processed foods and getting them to eating real whole food. Like, I don't claim to the program. It's not anything specific. It's not, I say paleo inspired, but we don't follow all the paleo rules. So it's not paleo. It's not vegan. It's not pegan. It's not carnivore. It's not keto. It's like eat real food. And we try to dial in on making sure that they're getting like adequate protein and healthy fats and non-starchy veggies and then slow digesting carbs and hitting all the hormonal wins, right? But then I'm like, if you get off this program and you go right back to shitty processed food, like, did you not learn anything, And we have some that do that, right? And then I've got the dedicated people that go on to change their entire lifestyle. And a year later, they're like, I lost 60 pounds and like, look at my lab work. It's like all improving. And I'm able to get off like 6 medications. And it's just, that's a super win. But yeah, the whole point of the reintroduction phase is like personal discovery, and it's like lesson learning, right? Because we really want to reinforce what works and what doesn't work for you personally.
And that's the thing, whenever someone says, oh, I'm doing a keto diet, and then I go, well, so are you targeting your ketogenic production, the ketone production with a ketone reader and, doing all this? And well, no, then what are you doing? Well, I kind of like reduce my carbohydrate intake and I'm adding more veggies and I'm adding more meat. Oh, so you're doing like just eating real food. It's like it's like sometimes these labels help us because they popularize these ideas. And I like the ancestral diet, because paleo has been kicked and dragged, and what does it even mean? Eating real food, it's not sexy yet, but in the end, eating fast food every day, okay, and then going from fast food to a vegan diet, or going from fast food and the standard American diet to eating a keto diet with a big asterisk, because you can really fuck up a keto diet, or a sad and fast food to a paleo-esque or Mediterranean or whatever. It's going to be a shift forward because you're eliminating processed foods. You're on all of those diets. You're eliminating processed foods. You're eliminating excess sugars. You are reducing sodium intake, which can be a good thing or a bad thing, and then you're increasing the nutritional density of your food. So of course you're gonna get better, but what is the best for you? What is the best diet for that specific person? And in order for you to be able to identify that, you're gonna have to go through some self-experimentation. And that's where the N=1 becomes very important, because not everyone is allergic to wheat. Not everyone is allergic to beans. Not everyone is allergic to eggs. And there are some people that might have a sensitivity towards things that we believe to be amazing, such as beef or, goat or whatever, eggs. Eggs is a big one,
Oh, yeah. I see eggs all the time. I almost feel like eggs are like, they're the top 3.
Eggs, dairy, and wheat to me are the top
Yep.
3. So, okay, so how do you explain that to people? Because so-and-so told me that eggs are amazing and they have a lot of B vitamins and a lot of, choline. And, why are you eliminating eggs?
So people get really worked up over having to let go of eggs. And so the conversation goes into that it's about what you're eating and what it ate too. What are chickens meant to be doing? They should be running around the field, eating grubs and bugs, not eating corn and soy. That's not natural chicken diet. And so I explained that, when they change the way that the chickens should be eating to eating a more inflammatory diet, they change the healthy fatty acid profile of the egg into a more inflammatory one, right? It throws off our omega ratios. And so people kind of like, okay, I kind of get that. And then if people are visual, I'll show them pictures of what an egg would look like from, a grain-fed chicken versus what an egg yolk looks like from a healthy chicken. And it's very visually different in color, and the healthier one's very bright orange compared to the pale yellow. And they start to like, oh, okay, I get that. And then of course, getting them out of the diet and then for up to 21 days. So the immune system can chill, and then bringing it back in and then seeing how they react.
And most people can't tolerate eggs after you've kind of eliminated most of the inflammation. Because, I like to say that, the most inflammatory thing that we do is breathing. You're literally grabbing oxygen and taking away electrons and oxidizing things in your body. So it's like that's like the most oxidative thing we do. The second most oxidative thing we do is eating. Okay, so it is an inflammatory process. Even if you're eating like the most beautiful, Pope blessed, fairy tale, amazing, nutritionally dense food, you are incorporating amino acids and fats and carbohydrates into your system. And that's a very inflammatory process. So eating anything is inflammatory. It's just we're trying to look for the least inflammatory foods that our body will accept with the most ease. And the more inflamed you are, the more reactions you're going to have to different food groups. So as you identify and correct some of this inflammation, then you can have the latitude to include other things. So as your stomach heals, as your intestine heals, as your digestion improves, once you have robust digestion, now you're going to be able to break down those difficult proteins in eggs that might be inflammatory now. Now, there's things that you'll probably never be able to reincorporate, maybe, but for the most part, we can triage and identify a pretty extensive diet that is going to be easy to live with. You're going to be able to go to a restaurant and order and not have to like grill the server to make sure that you don't have any. But maybe for a period of time, you're going to have to cook at home and make sure all the ingredients are there and you're eating real food. And once you identify, once you control your symptoms, once you feel better, then you can start making these decisions on what can come back in and what can't.
When we're in the elimination phase, I also am working on gut health with the patient from like a 5R gut health approach, right? We do the remove, which in this case is the inflammatory food sensitivity foods, like the top 8 that I mentioned. And we replace, so we add in digestive enzymes and try to aid in digestion and kind of get, I like to put in like betaine and get like the stomach acid repopulated, and then we re-inoculate. So we'll do probiotics, and then I'll have them eat fermented foods and resistant starch. And then we repair. So we put in products. I've got like a GI support product that has like glutamine and acetylglucosamine and the slippery elm and the marshmallow and aloe vera. So we're like helping that gut lining repair itself. And then we focus on rebalancing with the lifestyle choices. We deal with things like that affect the gut health, like stress and sleep and exercise and getting out into the sunlight and whatnot. Now, that's my approach. I've heard that you have a pretty good gut health approach, but you only share it with Ari Witten. So,
well, it's super, super comprehensive. Okay. But listen, I can call you and then maybe we can set up and maybe I can opine on what you're doing, because one of the biggest things that I do for my gut healing protocol is using high dose IgG in the form of like colostrum.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of using that. And then, I have a couple of theories on probiotics and probiota that maybe before the launch, maybe we should sit down for an hour and or send me the materials and I'll go over it and I'll give you a different perspective. And it could be like, what, this is phenomenal, don't change anything. Or maybe I can be like, this is what I would change here and there, because we're trying to help people. That's what we're trying to do. And that's the most important thing we can do, is help each other and share our clinical and research experience and help as many people as possible.
I appreciate that. We definitely need to do that, because I've been toying with the idea of developing my own colostrum supplement, and I had listened to one of your other podcasts and you were like singing praise, and brought me back to thinking about when I had this patient that he was just having all these skin rash breakouts and whatnot. And we did do some food sensitivity tests on him through Vibrant wellness. And of course, gluten, dairy, and eggs, right? And I'm like, we got to get you off of this, and we need to work on your gut health, and you need to take colostrum. When he got the colostrum, he freaked out because it said contains milk. And
Oh
I
my
was like,
goodness. Yeah.
okay, I know that I said no dairy, but in this case, this is totally safe. Like, not you. I'm like, you need this product. Within a week, he's like, oh my gosh, my skin is doing so much better.
It's so funny, because you will see things like gluten-free vodka. Okay. Well, okay. So yeah. So gluten is a protein, and proteins float around, or are contained within grain. But when you distill wheat to the point that you are extracting just the ethanol, there are no proteins left behind. So that product could have been made with wheat, but the distillation process literally distills away all the proteins. If not, you would have like really chunky vodka, and who wants that? But that takes away the gluten, so it's essentially a gluten-free product, So like, for example, why are we concerned about dairy? Okay, so dairy it's very inflammatory. It's a liquid that makes tiny mammals into huge mammals, okay? And especially cow dairy, just look at the size of those animals, and they drink milk and they get bigger. So it has things like whey, which is a protein that makes you grow, and with growth comes inflammation. It has casein, which can be very inflammatory. It has albumin, which is, again, inflammatory. And those are proteins, okay? It also has lactose, which is a type of sugar that some humans can't process, okay? So because it has all those things, it has a lot of different ways that it can inflame you. So eliminating it is eliminating all of those things. Now, if you are using dairy to extract immunoglobulins, okay, isolate those immunoglobulins, encapsulate those immunoglobulins, and then you're using them to attack and reduce inflammation in the gut, well, you're not using whey and casein and all of those things. You're using a different part of the dairy. So taking an immune complex, like colostrum, does not mean you're eating lactose, casein, albumin, and whey. You are using that technology specifically for its anti-inflammatory properties. So being aware that, yeah, the product is made from dairy, but that does not mean it has the inflammatory proteins that in dairy. Like, for example, eggs, eliminating eggs. One of the most inflammatory proteins within eggs is in the egg white. It's called avidin, and a lot of people react to avidin. But the yolk can be pretty healing, and some people might be able to, even in an inflammatory process, benefit from egg yolks. They are eggs, but that's not the inflammatory part of the egg. And then you can get even more granular, like, for example, soy. If you ferment soy and you create natto, it's high in vitamin K, it's very low in the phytochemicals that inflame you, and it's a soy product. It can get very, very complicated. So we make this kind of rules that should be followed, but there's reasons why we do things and we recommend things that might be made from dairy, that might be made with soy, long story short, we actually have a product that is made not from milk, but it's a colostrum alternative. It's more expensive, but there's less pushback from our patients about using it just because it's not made from dairy.
I'm sure that's helpful. Because then they don't even have to see it. They don't have to worry.
Yeah, because I was like, we were using a dairy-derived product, and they would be like, but it has dairy. So then I would have to spend 10 minutes explaining that it's okay. And then we found this new product that is not made from dairy, and that saved me so much time. And it's just easier. Sometimes it's easier just not to fight.
Yeah, it's just, I know, just having that on the back of the bottle just freaks the patients out. I'm going to have a whole disclaimer around that. No, that was a good explanation. Like the way that you described it with the egg white and egg yolk. I mean, that's how I always describe it with my patients too, because in the labs, it's always coming back that it's the egg white almost all the time, right? And the same thing for my husband, but he can have yolks and it's just fine.
And I'm upset because just like your husband, I break out whenever I eat dairy, but it doesn't give me the poops. It doesn't destroy my day. It doesn't give me a migraine. So when I'm in San Diego, I'll go to Salt and Straw and have some pretty high quality ice cream, and I might have a breakout for a couple of weeks, but it's okay because I'm living life. I just don't do it every day.
There's one thing that I think we should touch upon. What about this whole molecular mimicry thing? Like gluten and dairy look like the thyroid. I feel like you can really touch upon this one. I feel like they need to hear this.
Yeah, so when you have intestinal permeability, you eat proteins, and those proteins escape, through holes in your gut to the bloodstream. And in the bloodstream, they are encountered by the immune system. And then the immune system attacks those proteins, and the immune system doesn't have eyes. It's not like the immune system can look at something and attack it and say, okay, this is the shape of the immunoglobulin that I have to make in order to neutralize this potential bad protein. So toxic proteins from like bacteria can cause really, bad damage, into your intestine. Like for example, Shigella can cause bleeding, with just the toxic proteins that it makes. Okay. So your body is able to see that that's an intruder, and then it forms up, the platelets, and the platelets are made at random. And if that platelet fits into that protein and inactivates it, then that IgG, it becomes IgG, and now it's going to be a long-term memory. So if it ever encounters that type of protein again, we can attack it pretty fast and neutralize it. The problem is that these proteins can mimic the amino acid sequence of other structures in the body. Okay, so like for example, your pancreas, your thyroid, your skin, and that's what we call an autoimmune disease. You were trying to attack something, you created this key, and this key happens to also fit on your pancreas or your thyroid or your skin, in the case of psoriasis, your joints in the case of arthritis. Now, the research is not 100% clear on the molecular mimicry of foods. And this is something that I discovered, earlier this year, that I was very sure that molecular mimicry through foods, and it's not super, super clear. It is very clear in molecular mimicry of viruses and bacteria. Viruses like EBV, viruses like CMV, viruses like enterovirus, and the enterovirus molecular mimicry to the pancreas is pretty well established. The problem is things like an enterovirus lives in the enteric system, and if it's floating around in your bloodstream, why did a virus that's supposed to live in your colon or your small intestine, why is it floating around in your bloodstream? Well, intestinal permeability. And there are other things that can cross that barrier because of intestinal permeability. So those inflammatory foods can really, really, really affect the sealing of your gut and opens up the gut. And now you have a lot of intestinal permeability with bacteria and viruses and poop literally floating around in your bloodstream. Interestingly, the way that colostrum works, it's IgG. So these molecules that neutralize things, taken from the immune system of a cow, and then you consume it. And before it goes outside of your intestine, it binds to these toxic things like Shigella, like endothelial toxic factors, and then neutralizes them without your immune system having to be activated. So it's like taking the immune system of the cow and reducing the inflammation in that way. So that's why I am such a big fan of colostrum and colostrum-like products, because they prevent these inflammatory proteins to go outside into your bloodstream by binding to them inside the intestine, and even if they are outside of the intestine and go into the bloodstream, then your immune system looks at them and is like, oh, okay, they're already bound, we don't need to react and we don't need to attack them. So it kind of like calms down your immune system, deactivates or inactivates antivinculin antibodies and different bacteria and different viruses and different bad things, binds them and inactivates them, so then you can finally start that healing process. So yeah, kind of gnarly and interesting, but the reason why we have such high levels of autoimmune disease is that our ancestors, if they didn't have this overreactive immune system, would get a ton of different infections. And as we have cleaned up the environment, and I'm literally talking about using hand sanitizers or living in a very clean house, our immune system kind of gets bored and it wants a little bit more interaction because it's ready to attack. So whenever you have like a super clean environment where, maybe you didn't play in the dirt when you were growing up, maybe, you were living in a tiny, quote unquote bubble, the first thing that your body identifies as an intruder, it overreacts because it hasn't been reacting to anything, and then it starts attacking it. And now you're going to have a bigger chance of developing an autoimmune condition. There has been studies about the levels of asthma between people that grew up in a farm versus people that grew up in an industrialized city. And the kids in the farm didn't have as high levels of asthma because they were playing the dirt and maybe by mistake eat a little poop and so the immune system knows not to overreact. But you take a kid that never had those interactions, and now all of a sudden, maybe one day, there's some acid rain because there's a lot of smog, and then you have a torrential downpour, and now they're getting exposed to all these toxins, and now your immune system's like, yeah, let's do this, and it starts over attacking, and that's how you can develop asthma. And remember, once your immune system attacks something, it remembers it. And now it's going to continue attacking it and attacking it and attacking it if it's provoked. So when you make thyroid antibodies and, you are exposed to toxins, in like, for example, lead or cadmium or something like that, now every time you have like a little bit of weight loss where you dissipate some of these toxins that are stored in your fat, if you're not detoxifying properly, you're going to have a ramp up of antibodies because your whole immune system attacks. Or if you are in a constant state of inflammation on your gut, and then you add more inflammation, and then you get a little bit of food poisoning, now you're going to be completely inflamed, and your psoriasis is going to go up, and your autoimmune conditions are going to go up. So that's why we need to kind of like retrain our immune system, and that's why it's so important to reduce the inflammation and then reintroduce things that you might be a little bit reactive to kind of like retrain your immune system to not go ape shit next time you have that exposure.
That was a solid explanation. Good job. Well, I mean, I just feel like we could go so many ways with this. We could start talking detox, proper detox. I mean, you hit upon lead. I'm dealing with that right now. I'm doing heavy metal chelation therapy with the detoxing. It's like the moral of the story is like play in the dirt. Stop over sanitizing everything. Enjoy life.
Enjoy life because that stress, like if you are in constant sympathetic mode, you are going to shift energy consumption from the gut into your limbs and your lungs and your heart because you want to run away from the tiger. And when you do that, now you're going to have more intestinal permeability. There's a study that compared the intestinal permeability of level 1 trauma survivors and marathon runners. And they have same levels of response to that stress. So you might think you are, you are enjoying this run or whatever, and you love, feeling all wobbly after you finish, 26.1? I forget. But the levels of intestinal permeability are comparable as if you had crashed your car and you were in ICU.
Dude, I'm so glad I'm not into that long distance cardio stuff.
Were you ever?
No.
I was.
No. I mean, I was a sprinter. I've always been a power.
Yeah.
I'm
No.
fast and I'm strong.
I,
Yeah.
I I
So
used to
no.
be, and like now I look back at myself and I was like, what the hell was I doing? Because you actually enjoy it, and it's like this like state of flow where where you're moving and you're and you get into like this such a stressful situation, and the only way out is to cross that finish line, and everything shifts, and now that's your only goal in life, to survive, quite literally. So yeah, no, I'm so glad that I do a little bit of powerlifting now.
Right. Dr. C does. What's he
He's a
doing?
beast. He's a beast. And listen, there is no such thing as overtraining. Okay, there is under recovering. Dr. C, he is living his life right now. He is training us. He is giving us new research. He goes to bed at 8. He wakes up, with the sun. He does everything right. He eats like one of the cleanest diets. He doesn't drink. He doesn't drink coffee. Because of all of that, he is able to afford that inflammation. He has time to recover. Where you about to launch a program, about to help so many people, and recording things, and and all of this, if you were to pick up marathon running, you would break again.
You're exactly right.
But if you have enough recovery, you can do whatever. We are not, and I want everyone to just listen to this next thing. We are not delicate little dandelions floating in the wind. We are robust. We are here talking on this crazy apparatus because we are resilient, robust, and we can fix problems and survive. And whoever tells you any different, they're wrong. We have this inherent power to heal and get better, as long as you put the conditions for this healing process to happen. And the more we do for our healing, the more robust we continue to become, to where, we can go to San Diego and have a couple of drinks and then continue, trucking along. But at some point, you do have to have that period of recovery. So for anyone listening, if you suffer from fatigue, if you suffer from pain, if you suffer from migraines, if maybe you just need a little bit of rest and recovery, and understanding what's inflammatory and fixing those things. And once you fix those inflammatory processes, and you are able to identify the foods that you can tolerate and you can't, and once you start sleeping and doing all those lifestyle things that are hard to do, then you are going to be back on track, and then you can do whatever you want. But the important thing is that we are not, this fragile little things that cannot, we are very robust and we kick ass. So there is a lot of hope in a lot of really cool people like you that are helping so many people identify, those stressors, and identify those inflammatory processes and reverse them. And once that happens, man, you can do whatever the hell you want.
I love it. It's perfect. You got to pick your battles, right?
Yeah. So, Deb, when are you launching? How can people find you? Where can people, get a hold of you?
Yeah. So, we're aiming to launch the food sensitivity slim down program in late September. We're kind of shooting for the 17th or maybe the 24th. We just got to get the supplement line that I'm launching all ready to go. Aside from that, they can get me at drdebbybright.com. You can find me on social media. I'm on Instagram. The handle is Dr. Debbie Bright. That's DRDEBBIEBRIGHT. And I'm pretty responsive. So whatever you guys need, just hit me up. Happy to help.
And who is this program for? The food sensitivity slim down.
Well, our whole tagline is we help millennials heal their face fat and fatigue. But, we've found that we have a great secondary audience too, which is like we've got the millennial females and we got the millennial females moms. But like I said, this program is really it's really for anyone. But husbands have great results. Everyone has great results because everybody benefits from dialing in their food sensitivities and finding out, what diet exactly works for them. So come one, come all, we're super happy to help.
That's awesome. Well, I don't want to take any more of your time. This is we could talk for hours and hours, but it's always awesome to hang out with you. And next time you're in Arizona, we're gonna go grab some amazing paleo meals, or paleo-ish, or we're just gonna eat real food.
I'm down with paleo. I'm down with it. I'll be there in October, actually.
Awesome.
So if not before, yeah. So we'll get together.
Yeah, hit me up.
Okay, we'll do.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the interview. I'll talk to you soon.